20 minutes after 9, 253-5959, touch star 590 from AT&T. Toll free from anywhere, 1-877-777-0590, or email jackpatty@WVLKAM.com. My guest, for those of you who just joined us, is Scott Jennings. He's the state director for an organization called Coalition to Protect Kentucky Jobs. Basically, it's about the Employee Free Choice Act, often referred to as card check. This is Philip. Good morning, Philip. You're on the air. Philip, are you there? Hello, Philip. All right, we have one lost it. Philip calls back, 253-5959, touch star 590 from AT&T, toll free from anywhere, 1-877-777-0590, or email jackpatty@WVLKAM.com. Talk to us about the union pension funds and how this figures into this whole equation.
Well, it's a good point, Jack. You know, the unions are supposed to be managing and administering these multi-employer pension plans, and the reality is those plans have been poorly managed, and they have a lot of financial problems. And so what we're seeing is an effort by the big labor bosses to shore up those pension plans by one of two things: either getting a direct taxpayer-funded bailout from the federal government, or through legislation like EFCA, forcing more people into being a dues-paying union member. In fact, on the first point, Senator Bob Casey of Pennsylvania has introduced legislation that addresses the funding problems in these pensions by shifting the cost of their burden to the federal government. It would start at $10 billion in the initial outlay, but the obligation could expand as the plans are underfunded, really, by hundreds of billions of dollars. And so you already have some people in the Congress who are moving to have a direct taxpayer-funded bailout of these poorly managed pension plans. And so what you have there is the transfer of private indebtedness to the taxpayers, even though the union officer plans are very well funded. So we think that's fundamentally unfair, and we also think it's fundamentally unfair to pursue legislation that would force people into unions who don't want to be in unions. I mean, you look at poll after poll after poll, and you find the general public does not think the secret ballot should be eliminated in this election or in any other election. Even surveys among actual union members show you that a grand majority of rank-and-file union members don't think that you should eliminate the secret ballot in these things.
Robert, good morning. You're on the air. Thanks for calling.
Concerning one provision there you mentioned about whether the federal government can step in and dictate, we had that very situation that happened back in the early 60s, in which there was a strike, the steel workers, and John Kennedy had just been elected, I don't know, a couple of years before that, and he sent negotiators down there, or mediators, to mediate the situation, and quite frankly, you probably have a good idea of what happened, but anyway, they did get a contract, and then about 4 weeks or so later, U.S. Steel increased some of their prices in order to take care of the costs that they were incurring. Kennedy made a statement, well, we thought we had an agreement there. Now, and I had been with U.S. Steel until early in 1960. I was a low-level cost clerk. And so I talked to some of the fellows that were still with U.S. Steel, and they said that just a few days after he made that statement about we thought we had an agreement, that there was literally an army of IRS agents that came in on Monday morning at the headquarters there in Pittsburgh, all over that place. Said they could not get a thing done for those agents saying, okay, I need this, I need this, I need to see this. And this went on for several days, and of course they got the message, and they rescinded the price increases, and the next day no IRS agents showed up. Now, this doesn't sound too bad in a sense, but if you look back to what happened, and in a few years, U.S. Steel almost went bankrupt, and they are simply a skeleton of the company that they used to be. Now, I'm not in love with U.S. Steel, but I'm telling you, this provision that you mentioned is probably far more detrimental than even you realize.
Stay on the line, Robert. What do you say, Scott?
Well, he raises a very good and valid point about putting the federal government in the middle of the operations of any kind of business. And the reality is that the Employee Forced Choice Act would put the federal government in a place where it could impose a contract on businesses which simply refuse to yield to union demands. And so we think that binding mandatory arbitration in a government takeover is a government takeover of small businesses. So here's how it works. After 90 days of collective bargaining, then you have the negotiations being forced into mediation and soon thereafter into binding arbitration. In this arbitration process, the government writes the contract, so you have the federal government dictating to a business and its workers how this business is going to run. That lasts for at least 2 years, whether the employer or the employees agree to it or not. So what you have then is a situation where it is entirely possible that you have workers who are in a union they don't want to be in or didn't get to vote on, and now they're abiding by a contract that they also didn't get to vote on and may not even agree with. And so you have the federal government here under this legislation saddling businesses with federal bureaucrats who are dictating workplace, salaries, benefits, rules. That'll increase costs and burdens. Businesses could close their doors permanently. They could move overseas. It is a bad deal for not just the business owners, but it's a bad deal for the workers. It will cost this economy jobs.
Robert, any follow-up? Sounds like he's preaching to the choir when he's talking to you.
A couple things. I'm unalterably opposed to eliminating the secret ballot for membership. And by the way, in my family, there were pile-ups that were union members. Unions out of control is just as bad as employers out of control. And you fellows have a good day, and thanks for your programs, Jack.
All right, Robert, thank you. Did you set that call up?
No, I didn't. But you know what? And it's a funny point. But if you look at surveys, Jack, and you look at polling data, and you just sort of listen to what you hear people saying out across Kentucky and across the country, they say a lot of the same stuff. I don't want the federal government running in the middle of business operations. I don't want mismanaged, things to get federal taxpayer bailouts. I don't want secret ballots to be eliminated for everything. I mean, think about the bedrock principles of our democracy. You go into a voting booth, the curtain closes, and you get to make a private choice. And the thought of eliminating that private choice from an election of any kind is fundamentally un-American to most people. You hear these things time and time again, even from people who are already in unions. And so I think that caller speaks for a lot of Kentuckians. They want the secret ballot. They don't want the government in the middle of business operations. They want this economy to recover, and they don't want a taxpayer-funded bailout of mismanaged union pension funds. I mean, these union bosses, Jack, have spent hundreds of millions of dollars on political campaigns year after year after year. They collect these forced dues from people. They spend all that money on politics. They spend millions of dollars sending themselves on lavish conferences and living a lavish lifestyle. And yet at the same time, the pension funds for these rank-and-file workers are underfunded by hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. It is a terrible situation, and that's why they're pursuing this Employee Forced Choice Act. They're trying to get the forced union dues to come in the door to make up for their own mismanagement of these pension funds. It's despicable, it's un-American, and every Kentuckian needs to know about it, especially this year.
Sounds like the government to me. Sounds like politicians are running the unions.
Well, I will say that...
Or maybe it's the other end.
Well, I think what you have is the attitude right now in this country that taxpayer-funded bailouts of anything, we've had enough, and people are getting sick and tired of it, and these union bosses haven't gotten the message.
Taking a break, 253-5959, touch star 590 from AT&T, toll free from anywhere, 1-877-777-0590, email jackpatty at WVLKAM.com. We've got an update from Scott and Brad, and we'll be right back.